Hello and welcome. Today I'd like to share a project that came to me as I looked at this pasta box. I decided to make it into a journal cover because I really like that little window and I want the window at the top of the front of the cover. I trimmed off the extra pieces of that pasta box and I trimmed down the spine part to 1.5 inches because I thought it was a little too wide for my purposes in making this journal. So I trimmed it down to 1.5 inch, which is the usual size of the spine I like to use when I make a 3 signature junk journal. And I took off that plastic off the window because I wanted it to be open. Now I'm taping the pieces together with that masking tape, and you'll see how that comes together. It's pretty easy. Just cut some masking tape and I lay it down. I just eyeball everything when I do these things, and I'm going to be painting the cover because of course I'm not going to leave it like that. And adding the spine, leaving a little gap, generally the width of one of your covers. As you can see there, I was starting to measure and then I decided just eyeball it. And I'm doing the same thing on the other side, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the inside and trim it all up, which you'll see in just a moment. I don't know why, when I saw this box in the little window, I had this idea to make a grungy off-white and brown journal, and now I'm just making sure that the masking tape is pressed down really well, and I realize that I have to do the whole thing, so I'm using my bone folder to press that down really well. So I'll do that on the outside and the inside. Anyway, I decided I was going to make a grungy off-white and brown cover, and this project actually turned out like really close to what I envisioned, which is amazing because that doesn't usually happen to me, but I'm happy that it did. And now I'm going to cover this with gesso because I'm going to add some paint on the top of that, and of course to cover up all the logos and the other colors. I ended up covering the front with 2 layers of gesso and the inside with just one. Then I let that all dry. And because I wanted a vintage grungy look, I thought I would add a layer of something next. And I had originally thought that I would use some book pages, which is what I like to use, but I came across this Tim Holtz tissue paper, and I thought it was kind of the look that I was going for, and I'm going to add some paint on top of that, so you won't see a lot of that anyway, but you'll just see some of the writing and images kind of peeking through. So I'm applying that with matte medium, and all on the front of the cover. I just do the same thing and cover the whole front. You'll see. I probably should have trimmed some of this back or edited some of it, but it is the way it is now. And as far as the inside of the cover, I don't really spend a lot of time on that because I just didn't feel like I needed it to. I didn't feel like this cover needed that. And so you'll see what I do next with the cover is I'm going to add some white and brown, and I added the brown on the inside, the brown paint on the inside cover. Just very simple, but I like the way it looks. So here I go, still gluing. Originally I thought I might just do some book pages, like I said, here and there, But I don't know, I ended up deciding to cover the whole thing, and actually it turned out great as far as I'm concerned, and that little bit of extra paper maybe adds a little more sturdiness to the cover too. It's not a real heavy cover, but it's not a flimsy one either. But I thought another layer couldn't hurt. I'm covering this with matte medium again. I just thought it needed it since I'm going to be adding paint. It's still kind of wet, as you can see, so I'm making a little bit of a mess, but I trim it down. I really should have waited till it was dry, but I didn't, and it's fine. And it worked out fine, and this is a grungy, as I said, cover, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It's far from perfect. I trimmed the window part, and again, because it doesn't have to be perfect, I just cut it with the scissors, and it actually looks fine. There you go. With a different sort of journal, of course, you'd have to be much more careful cutting that window part. Plus, that tissue paper is pretty easy to mold, as you can see, mold it around the edges if needed. All right, so on top of this layer, I'm going to add some white gesso. I decided to use the gesso because it's right there, and it's a base, a good base for anything else I did. And you could add white paint, of course, but I use gesso instead of white paint from time to time. So that's all, just one layer of gesso there, and then I decided to add some brown, and I went with the golden high flow acrylic. The color is sepia because I love that brown look. That was the look I wanted, and I'm spreading it out. It's pretty liquidy, but it's not spreading all that great, so I added some water and spreading it out with a paper towel or a wipe. But I don't think my paper towel was damp enough, I guess, so that's why I'm adding some water to help it spread out a little bit more. And that's, the look I was going for, so I'm happy with that so far. And the way you see me doing this on the outside is the way I did the inside, but I didn't record that part. But you'll see a little bit later what that inside looks like. I wanted the edges to be a little bit darker, so that's what I'm doing now. And then after this, I'm going to go in with some gesso again because I didn't want it to be quite so dark. I think it looks fine like that, actually, but that's just not the look that I was going for. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the white gesso, which you'll see in a moment. I use my fingers to spread the gesso around. I often use my fingers and paper towels or wipes to spread paint and blend it in. And again, I'm pleased with the way it looks because that's kind of what I was going for. So it all turned out great, and as far as I can see. Now, I'm still spreading the gesso. So after I do this, I kind of let it sit overnight to dry and also to think about what I wanted to do next because I honestly wasn't sure. And it came to me the next morning, actually, that I wanted to stamp a butterfly on the cover. And I found this stamp with 3 butterflies. And I want my stamping to look really good. So when I want that look, I stamp on a piece of tissue paper, as you can see there what I'm doing. And that way, if I don't stamp it well, then I can do it over again until I get the stamping to look the way I want to. And then I apply the tissue paper to my project. So you'll see how I do that in just a minute. But actually it turned out really great the first time, which was amazing. And so I'm done with that. And then I wanted to also add a little bit of that script writing on that Tim Holtz stencil, with my ink there. This one I don't want it to be perfect. I just wanted to add a little bit of the script writing here and there. So I'm just doing it randomly here and there, haphazardly. I'm not trying not to think about it too much, and just stamp a bit here and there, which I'm quite happy with the way that turned out too. And you can see the tissue paper kind of peeking through in spots, so that achieved the look that I was going for too. So far this project is coming along. So you can see I'm stamping upside down, and it's all good. You can't really read that writing anyway. So I'm pleased with the way that turned out. Then I take my tissue paper and I wet my brush and you can see I'm tracing the outline of the image. It helps to tear easier, so I don't tear my image where I don't want to, and those torn images I think blend in better once you apply it to your project. So I'm going to be using matte medium to apply that image under and over the top of the image, and it blends into the background really, really nicely. You can't even tell that it's tissue paper, so that worked out really well too. So far, so good. And also wanted to mention later on, I'll be showing you in just a minute the papers I'll be using for the inside of this journal. I didn't show me sewing in the signatures because I just thought it would make this video too long, and I've shown that in other videos I've done in the past. And if you are not sure how to do that, I used a 3-hole pamphlet stitch to sew the signatures in, and you can search that on YouTube, and there are tons of videos on how to do that. So I forgot I wanted to darken the edges a little bit more, so I used some of that brown distress ink to do that. And then I'm just going to show you the papers that I pulled out to use for the signatures. So I have 3 Tim Holtz scrapbook papers. I guess this is a Tim Holtz project that I'm going to use as the front cover for each of my 3 signatures. I have some tea-dyed cuppy paper. This is like a Khadi paper. It's spelled Khadi. That's what it looks like originally, but I tea-dyed it, and I had the idea, it was the exact perfect size. I had the idea to use that paper and let it stick out a little bit more on the top and sides of my journal. Again, I don't know why, I just had that idea that I wanted to try it. That's some tracing paper that I recently experimented on with inks and paints and alcohol inks. And then I pulled out some of my gel prints, some, as I call them, painty papers that I just put extra paint and things on as I'm working, and sheet music, and ledger paper. These are the standard papers I like to use on the inside of my journals. And I don't know if I mentioned book pages. So I have all my signatures trimmed and ready to go to be sewn in, and you'll see I'll do a little flip through at the end of how I'm going to put it all together. I'm going to add some words in the window, and then I'll be done. So I'll be back in a minute. Here is my finished journal. I love to use sari silk ribbons as a closure, and lately I like having it kind of loose so you can take it off when you work in the journal, put it to the side. So I sewed in the signatures with black thread because I wanted to match the black on the cover. As you can see, I attached the words. I decided to use Colorful Dreams on here, and because I can't help myself, I made another one, which I'll show you in a second, and I used the other words on here. So I'll just do a super quick flip through. This is just a very simple undecorated journal, but I love the way it came out because I kind of had the idea for the cover in my mind, but a lot of times these things don't work out the way I have them, I picture them in my mind, so I'm quite happy that this one did. It's, you know, it's got some wonky pages. Again, that was on purpose because I wanted kind of a grungy journal. And I'm like I said, I'm pleased with the way it turned out. I'm very happy with the pages. I think they're different and fun. I made these, I wasn't even planning on using them in these journals, but that worked out well too. And the scrapbook paper, I think, adds a nice touch to the journal. To add, you know, a little bit, and there are a lot of pages with different patterns and color, but to add a little bit of color to the inside, since the cover is quite monochromatic. I love the way that looks. That's Tim Holtz scrapbook paper. I love it. Okay, so that's that one. And then I made this one from a cracker box, and as you can see, the opening is a bit bigger, so I thought a picture in there would be nice. I basically did the same thing as this one, same process, but I wanted to make it more colorful for some reason. And I added this little metal piece because I thought that it just needed something over here. So I have this this vintage digital photo. It's not an actual vintage photo. And I used very similar papers to the other journal. Similar layout. I used some scrapbook paper, but this one's a little bit thinner because I was trying to match the you know, the colors and the style of the outside. And then in the center, I decided to use some handmade paper that was something I tried recently that I loved doing. And I added some washi tape on the center because of these papers, because they are more fragile since they're handmade. Handmade papers I don't think are that super strong. So, but I mean, it will hold up, and you can glue other papers on there to make it stronger too. So again, very similar design and all. This scrapbook paper that I used is a little more modern, not really vintage. I used some painty, as I call them, painty papers inside. Some of them are gel prints, and some are gel prints that I added paint on top of. This is the handmade paper. The other side of those papers, which I won't go through the whole thing. And then this is the last signature. Again, similar type of setup, and then I use this paper in the center. So that's how that looks, and I hope you like this tutorial. I didn't want to make it super long. Hope it's not too long, but I also decided that I'm probably going to sell these journals because I just have way too many journals. So I'll list them in my Etsy shop, and I'll put a link to my Etsy shop in the box below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.